he's critical of me, and of course, pretends that they're houses. No one's going to live in 10 houses, but that's a narrative, and there are many similar ones like that he pulls up. But tell me about something substantive, like the student loan issue. That's a place where he should have, I think, if he truly cared about the average American, and particularly the average person in Western Pennsylvania, he would have said, no, this is bad. You're having plumbers pay tuitions of lawyers. It doesn't make sense for someone who couldn't go to college, couldn't afford, didn't want to, and picked a different path in life to be taxed extra to pay the bills of someone who didn't bother either paying off their bills or pursuing a career where they could have. Life has challenges. We have obligations. There's consequences to your decisions. What about all the college graduates who paid their debt off? I still remember ripping out the last little coupon of my student loan booklet and sending it in. He instead takes a strong position that these people need $10,000 of debt instead of dealing with the core issue, which is why our university is so expensive.
So just to be clear, Oz desperately needed to help his flailing campaign, and the issue that this guy, who already has problems with looking like an out-of-touch multimillionaire, is focusing on is attacking student loan debt relief. Bravo, Dr. Oz. Bravo. I mean, it really is incredible. Oz is suggesting here that the fact that he's got 10 houses isn't substantive, since that was just a way for the Fetterman campaign to paint Oz as being too unrelatable and too rich. And so instead, we should talk about Oz's opposition to those Americans primarily making under $75,000 a year, getting between $10,000 and $20,000 in student loan debt forgiven. He's basically saying, don't pay attention to Fetterman's portrait of me as an out-of-touch plutocrat, pay attention to my portrait of me as an out-of-touch plutocrat. And Oz's rationale here is just rife with lazy platitudes and disinformation. He claims that plumbers are going to be paying the tuitions of lawyers, except the White House's guidance was crystal clear. No one making under $125,000 a year would benefit from this student loan debt forgiveness plan. And just a hint here, lawyers make more than $125,000 a year. In fact, 90% of the benefits from this plan will go to borrowers making under $75,000 a year. 90%. So I get that these lazy politician wannabes like Dr. Oz need to find something in this overwhelmingly popular plan to complain about, but the fact that they have to lie to do so is a testament to just how little ground they have to stand on. Oz goes on to explain how certain people shouldn't be paying off other people's bills. Now here's the thing about these student loans that I'm absolutely not surprised to know that Dr. Oz doesn't understand. Oftentimes the interest rates on these loans are so high, so predatory, that many people have already completely paid off the principal amount, and yet they're still left with a loan that's even higher than when they first took it out. This isn't about walking into Wegmans, which Dr. Oz is a popular grocery store chain in New Jersey, and refusing to pay your bill at the checkout line. This is about trying to get by and paying your loan amount every month, and yet still being plunged deeper and deeper into inescapable debt. And the fact that Oz is trying to conflate the two is as clear proof as you'll ever need that he's not only out of touch, he's not only ignorant, but he's also kind of an asshole. And look, I have no student loan debt. I did get a job while I was in college. I was a personal trainer and put in sometimes as many as 20 hours a week on top of a 5-class schedule while earning 2 degrees in 4 years. I busted my ass, and I had to because we were a regular middle-class family. My parents aren't investment bankers, they're nurses. So as someone who would derive zero benefit from this, my take is that if my tax dollars could go toward helping regular people who just need a break, then by all means, let's help them. For once, let's give a hand to regular folks who are just trying to get by instead of watching billion-dollar corporations get our money, instead of watching the military-industrial complex get our money, instead of watching the ultra-rich get tax cuts. We never hear a word of pushback when the top 1% get a handout. No one on the right ever decries socialism then. But God forbid a teacher, a truck driver, a cashier, a cook, a small business owner, a nurse gets a little bit of help. Notice how people making millions of dollars a year always try to convince those making $100,000 a year that those making $30,000 a year are the problem. Dr. Oz knows exactly what he's doing, because as long as people like him can pit the middle class against the lower class, then no one is paying attention to the upper class, which is precisely what Oz wants. And even if that argument isn't resonant with you, even if your position is that you don't want to pay for someone else, consider this. Right now, 43 million borrowers will receive some benefit from loan forgiveness. About 20 million borrowers will have their loans eliminated entirely. What do you think will happen to the economy when you suddenly make it accessible to 43 million more people? What do you think happens to small businesses, to restaurants, to travel destinations, to clothing stores, to movie theaters? What do you think happens when people can inject money into goods and services instead of pumping it toward predatory loan sharks? And then when businesses thrive, what do you think happens to the stock market? What do you think happens to your 401k? Allowing people to participate in the economy helps all of us. This is the prime example of how a rising tide lifts all ships. And by the way, don't take my word for it. Here's the Secretary of Education explaining it in his own words from my interview with him just a couple weeks back.
Again, let's remember why we're doing this. The HEROES Act gives us authority to ensure borrowers are not worse off after the pandemic than they were before. No different than the work to make sure our businesses stay afloat with the PPP, right? We're going to make sure that we're keeping our businesses up and open during the height of the pandemic when they weren't getting customers. Now we're helping Americans. We're reinvesting in Americans who fell on hard times. So, I don't have loans either. I had them. I'm happy for my neighbor who's now not going to suffer default, which would hurt my local economy, right? So I'm happy that I'm in a position where my loans were paid off, and that somebody who's struggling, especially because of the pandemic, can now get back on their feet and buy a home and contribute to my local economy, right? And to the people that say, look, I didn't go to college because of the cost. Well, with income-driven repayment now, we're making the pathway easier. So folks like you can now go to college, and also if you don't have college loans now, or if you didn't go to college, you might know someone in your family who's struggling with loan debt. You might be paying off the loan of your child who's struggling with loan debt, and we're going to make it easier for you. So this helps everyone, especially when we're reducing the number of people that are going to go into default.
And finally, just one last point. It really is rich hearing Republicans lecture us on spending, considering that party's sole legislative achievement in the Trump era was a tax cut, the benefits of which were overwhelmingly derived by millionaires and billionaires. A tax cut, by the way, that they all voted for. A tax cut that quite literally dried up federal revenues just before a pandemic where we would need those excess funds. And so when an economy downturn inevitably hit, we were left with no rainy day fund, all because the GOP, per usual, decided to reward their rich donors with a tax cut so that they would have the lowest top marginal tax rate in modern American history. So spare me if I don't believe you when you're whining about giveaways to the rich. The fact is that we've been here before. We've already seen one mega-rich con man use the same fake populism to glide his way into power. And guess what? All Trump did was bilk those supporters for even more money, taking in over $250 million alone while he was busy trying to overturn the election results. I'm not sure if you've realized or not, but con men don't really tend to be satisfied with their fortunes. If you think Oz, like Trump, doesn't intend to use his position of power to make even more money, then you are living on another planet. Oz wouldn't be an exception on the right, he is the rule. So at the end of the day, remember that Oz isn't in it for the voters of Pennsylvania, he's in it for Oz. Before you go, couple things. First, if you want to support my work, the best way is to subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. And second, if you want to see and hear more from me, check out my website, briantylercohen.com. That way you can get links to my podcast, merchandise, ways to donate to voting rights organizations, and so much more. The thumbnail is also right here on the screen, so go check it out. And as always, thank you so much for watching.